From emotionally rejecting her own son to betraying her own mother in family court, these are all the reasons why Marge Simpson might not be a good mother. First on our list, Marge Be Not Proud, an episode where Marge totally freezes out Bart because of a simple mistake. Worst mother ever. The episode starts with Bart obsessing over this ultra-violent game called Bone Storm. He's gotta have it, but Homer and Marge shut him down because, well, it's too expensive and way too violent. Good parenting, right? That night, Marge tucks Bart in and sings him a lullaby, but he's clearly over it, telling her he's too old for the whole thing. But Marge doesn't even hear him. She's just stuck on how much she loves babying her only son. Honestly, it feels a little suffocating for Bart, but what kind of mother has to listen to her own child?
Mom, I'm not a little kid anymore. Tuck-in time is lame.
Well, if loving my kids is lame, then I guess I'm just a big lame.
Mom, it's lame to be proud of being lame.
Anyway, Bart tries everything to get his hands on the game, begging, borrowing, visiting Milhouse, who promptly gets him kicked out for swearing, and even resisting the world's lamest substitute, Lee Carvello's putting challenge. Truly one of the many games of our time. Things escalate when Bart's had to try and save, still obsessing over this game. After some questionable encouragement from Jimbo and Nelson, plus some peer pressure from video game characters, he straight up shoplifts Bone Storm. Just goes right for it. Of course, karma smacks him immediately when the store security guy Brodka catches him. Bart gets a scary warning and a store ban, but manages to erase Brodka's tattling voicemail before his parents find out. For a second, it seems like he's in the clear, but then Marge decides the family must take their Christmas photo at that exact try and save. Well, that's just straight up bad news. Despite all his squirming and disguises, Brodka spots him and spills everything to the family, but Marge is in total denial, refusing to believe her son would do this and demanding proof, until Bart admits it himself. Watching Marge's disappointment settle in is brutal. She's crushed, not just because Bart shoplifted, but because it feels like proof she's been a bad mom.
I always thought I understood my special little guy, but somewhere along the road his hand slipped away from mine.
What are you gonna do?
He's not my little baby anymore. Maybe I mother him too much.
Gee, you think? Marge decides to go cold, pulling back on all the mothering she usually lavishes on it, but she goes way overboard. She basically shuns her own son, leaving him out of every family activity like snowman making. Honestly, it's about 1,000% more than she had to do. It's just cruel. Bart ends up spiraling, so desperate to win Marge back that he even spends time doing mom activities with Milhouse's mom. Kinda weird, but I get it. Eventually, he gets her the most thoughtful Christmas gift, a nice photo of himself. Marge is thrilled, forgiving him completely, and even gives him a game as a reward. Lee Carvello's putting challenge. What a gift. So what are Marge's crimes in this episode? Well, Marge does intend to break the law, so we're doing this one a little differently. Infantilizing Bart. Marge continues to treat Bart like a young child, ignoring his expressed discomfort with being baby. Bad mom. Emotional manipulation. When Bart shoplifts, Marge responds by withdrawing affection and excluding him from family activities, which is an insanely unhealthy form of punishment. Inconsistent discipline. Marge goes from completely shutting Bart out to fully forgiving him based on a single gift, without addressing or even acknowledging the root issues of his behavior. Lack of communication. Instead of discussing Bart's actions and feelings, Marge resorts to silent treatment and emotional withdrawal, leaving him confused and upset, rewarding bad behavior. By giving Bart a video game, albeit a boring one, after a shoplifting incident, Marge inadvertently reinforces the idea that gifts can make up for serious misbehavior. Honestly, this is already a hell of a bad way to parent, but she has a lot lower to go, friends. Our next episode, Bart Gets Hit by a Car, sees Marge actively working to prevent justice being served for her son. So the episode opens and Bart gets hit by Mr. Burns' car, having this near-death experience where he almost goes to heaven, but ends up in hell instead. The devil tells him to keep sinning and sends him back to his body. This is just what he's good at, but Marge has other concerns.
Is he well enough for me to start mothering him unbearably, Doctor?
Better let him rest up a while first.
Lionel Hutz, Springfield's shadiest lawyer, smells a quick buck in Bart's case, but Marge immediately kicks him out of the hospital room, saying they won't sue Burns. Marge has no interest getting into a fight she won't win, which might be a good move, but Homer, after a lowball settlement offer from Burns, decides otherwise lies and hires Hutz anyway. Hutz ropes Bart into exaggerating his injuries for sympathy, even using the sketchy Dr. Nick to fake a serious medical diagnosis. But no, Marge is not having it. She's uncomfortable with the lies, no matter how much Homer brushes her off. She makes it clear she just wants Burns to apologize and cover Bart's actual medical bills. She doesn't want anything more than that, which is kinda crazy, honestly. But Homer's greed takes over and he dreams of winning the $1 million lawsuit. Marge and Lisa are the only ones calling out how wrong this all is.
Excuse me, Mr. Hutz. Are you a shyster?
How does a nice little girl like you know a big word like that?
In court, things get ridiculous. Bart spins an over-the-top story about being an innocent kid mowed down by Burns in a car of death, while Burns claims he was delivering toys to orphans when Bart darted in front of him. The jury buys Bart's tale without question, but Marge is horrified watching her son lie on the stand, especially under oath and in the eyes of God. The family's dishonesty weighs on her, and she starts feeling more distant than Homer. Well, all of them really. Burns, trying to avoid losing, offers the Simpsons a $500,000 settlement. Marge wants to take it and move on with their lives, but Homer insists they hold out for the $1 million. Marge finally snaps and lays it all out. She's disgusted by the lies, the fake doctor, and Hutz's slimy tactics. She wants to move on from all of this. Burns eavesdrops and uses this to his advantage. The next day in court, his lawyer calls Marge to testify. Sticking to her principles, Marge cannot lie. She tells the truth about Bart's minor injuries and calls out Dr. Nick as a quack. Her honesty destroys the case, completely preventing justice being served. The Simpsons lose and Burns walks away victorious. It's a truly awful thing that Marge has done, throwing her son to the wolves just to make herself feel better. At dinner, Homer quietly blames Marge for losing the money. Well, she did. He sulks off to Moe's, where Marge follows him. They argue, but in the end, Homer realizes he still loves her. They reconcile, but it's clear Marge's honesty didn't just cost them the case, it put a real strain on their marriage. Well, yeah, she kept them poor. Let's break down her terrible parenting here, downplaying Bart's injuries. Marge initially minimizes the seriousness of Bart's accident, focusing only on minor issues like his inability to take out the trash, as if that's all he's good for, allowing Bart to participate in the lawsuit. While she voices her discomfort, Marge doesn't actively prevent Bart from lying in court or seeing the unethical Dr. Nick. She just complains, testifying against her son. By telling the truth in court, Marge publicly contradicts Bart's testimony, potentially damaging his trust in her and ruining the family's chance at justice, causing family tension. Marge's principles, while admirable, lead to financial loss and strain on her relationship with Homer, which could indirectly affect the children. Actually, it would directly affect the children. Okay, so Marge clearly wants her family to stay poor, fair enough, but then in scenes from the class struggle in Springfield, Marge obsesses over being one of the elite to the point of alienating her own family. The episode starts with the family needing a new TV after Grandpa messes up the old one, and while they're shopping at the outlet mall, Marge stumbles on this fancy Chanel suit. It's marked down from $2,800 to $90, which is an insane deal, I'm sure you'll all agree. Lisa hypes her up to buy it, and from there, it's like Marge goes full-on Real Housewives of Springfield. She wears the suit everywhere, and suddenly wants to hang with the rich and snooty crowd. Anything less is just not good enough for her. But things spiral when Marge runs into an old classmate at the Quickie Mart, who assumes Marge is now some classy socialite, based on the outfit alone. That lands her an invite to the country club, where she starts bending over backward to impress the elite and be seen as a somebody.
The rich are different from you and me.
Yes, they're better.
Marge becomes so fixated on being seen that she alters her suit repeatedly to make it look fresh and spends more time at the club, completely ditching her unclassy, crude family.
Mom, did you like horses when you were my age? Because
I don't know. Lisa, tonight is very important. Mommy has to alter her suit so it looks like a totally new one.
Yeah, so one of the greatest moms on TV, I'm sure you'll agree. Meanwhile, Homer and the kids are super uncomfortable in this new world. Lisa's fed up with all the perfect expectations, and Bart's just over it completely. Homer, on the other hand, gets roped into golf drama with Mr. Burns, who's totally cheating, but doesn't want Homer to rat him out. After all, Marge's membership hinges on staying in everyone's good graces. It really leaves him in a difficult position. Marge's obsession gets even worse after one of the club members makes a snarky comment about her re-sewn outfit. She tries sewing new alterations, but ruins the suit entirely.
At times like this, I guess all you can do is laugh.
Now, Marge is in serious trouble. She can go back to her old unfulfilling life or double down. Easy choice, right? Marge splurges on a $3,300 Chanel dress. When the family sees it, even Lisa's excited, but Marge snaps at her for asking too many questions. There is no good Marge mom behavior at this point, only anger and snappiness. Marge is all in on the club life, even telling the kids they're going to grow up as perfect dancers and forcing them into modeling. Like, really, Marge? Can you picture Bart as a dancer? Come on now. But then everything changes. At the big club party, Homer promises the family will just stand in a corner and be quiet so Marge can enjoy herself.
You kids should thank your mother. Now that she's a better person, we can see how awful we really are.
That's when Marge has a light bulb moment. She realizes she's become this snobby, judgmental person, totally unrecognizable. Everything that she once loathed. She ditches the club dream, praises her family's quirks, and admits the new dress is way too much. They end up skipping the initiation and head to Krusty Burger, where they belong. The kids are free from modeling, and Marge ditches her perfect dancer fantasy. Thank the Lord. What did Marge do wrong in this episode? Where do I begin? Neglecting her family. Marge spends excessive time at the country club, ditching her family responsibilities for these new people, prioritizing social status over her children's well-being. She becomes obsessed with impressing the elite, totally ignoring or dismissing her family's discomfort. Financial irresponsibility. Marge splurges on an expensive dress, potentially impacting the family's finances without much regard. Emotional instability. Marge snaps at Lisa for asking questions about the new dress, showing a pretty brutal lack of patience and understanding, setting a poor example. Her obsession with status and appearance teaches her children unhealthy values, although, to be fair, they already have a lot of those. Lack of communication. Marge fails to address her family's concerns about her behavior until the end of the episode, and even then, but it's not the first or last time Marge has alienated her family. In How Lisa Got Her Marge Back, Marge basically tells Lisa she hates when she plays the saxophone, which is crazy mean for a loving mother. The episode opens with Bart up to his usual antics, using a dollar on a string gag to prank pretty much anybody he can. But it backfires when even Ralph isn't fooled anymore. And when you can't fool Ralph, it's time to give it up. Meanwhile, Lisa's trying to share her new saxophone solo with the family. Homer bails, leaving Lisa to perform for Marge, who politely listens. But there's a problem. Later, Marge confesses to Homer.
I already heard Lisa's song once. I've had a long day. And to be completely honest, I really can't stand jazz.
What about when Lisa plays it?
All the same. Ugh.
Unfortunately, Lisa overhears the confession. She's crushed, calling Marge Marjorie, giving her the cold shoulder, doing whatever she has to do to make her point clear. Marge, feeling guilty, decides to make it up to Lisa with a bonding trip to Capital City, but Marge's attempts to connect keep flopping. Why would Lisa want anything to do with a mother who is so disrespectful? Lisa even stops wearing her iconic pearl necklace. Desperate, Marge drags Lisa to Bad News Bears, the musical, as a last-ditch fix. Lisa pretends to enjoy it to spare Marge's feelings, realizing this is what Marge has been doing for her jazz solos all along. It's not a personal insult, it's just what you do when you love someone. Then Marge fangirls over Andrew Rannells, the musical star, and arranges to meet him later. Not in a creepy affair way, of course. Back in Springfield, Homer puts Bart in charge of Maggie while the girls are away. Surprisingly, Bart finds Maggie makes an awesome prank partner. Together, they trick the Flanders into thinking Maggie's an angel and scare poor Gil into thinking he dropped a baby, which is a really twisted prank for the record. But things go south when Bart dresses Maggie up as himself, and Homer nearly strangles her. After that, Homer steps in and tells Bart to knock it off, worried Maggie might turn into a troublemaker like her big brother, or a victim of an unhinged father. Meanwhile, Lisa vents her frustrations to Andrew Rannells, complaining about her family, but Andrew calls her out, pointing out that she's ignored all of Marge's clumsy attempts to make things right. Finally, Lisa has an epiphany and feels awful. So back at the hotel, she and Marge finally hash it out, apologizing to each other and finding some middle ground. And I'm expressing why she's a bad mom. Dishonesty. Marge pretends to enjoy Lisa's jazz performances for years, setting up a false dynamic in their relationship instead of just admitting the truth. Overcompensation. When Lisa finds out the truth, Marge tries to fix things with an extravagant trip rather than addressing the issue directly. She's trying to manipulate her into forgiveness, ignoring Lisa's interests. During the trip, Marge focuses on activities she thinks Lisa will enjoy rather than listening to what Lisa actually wants. Big mom mistake, prioritizing her own interests. Marge gets caught up in meeting Andrew Rannells, momentarily neglecting Lisa's feelings. It works out, but still, I guess Marge learned a valuable lesson here, to listen and respect her children's interests. But then, why would she do that when she can just, get some time off in prison? This is Orange is the New Yellow. Homer promises to be home for dinner, but he gets roped into some ridiculous job by Mr. Burns, involving a gas leak and a plumb bob contraption that takes forever. I mean, nothing is ever simple when it comes to Mr. Burns, right? Meanwhile, Marge is at home, totally overwhelmed with life as a mom. She's trying to help Lisa with a school project about male seahorses, while also dealing with Maggie, who promptly spills food all over her. Bart steps in to help clean up the mess, but he makes things worse, of course. Frustrated, Marge sends Bart to play outside, which in this case turns out to be a total disaster. Bart heads to the park alone, where Martha Prince spots him and freaks out. Before long, the cops are in Marge's kitchen.
What did Bart do now?
I was playing nicely in the park.
Bart, how could you? What? Your children need to be supervised. Take her away, Marge.
Marge is arrested for neglect. Seriously, Marge gets thrown in jail for 90 days for daring to let Bart loose on the world. Instead of being devastated though, Marge quickly realizes the prison is actually a break from the chaos of her life. It's the vacation she never knew she needed. Meanwhile, Homer is left to juggle the kids on his own and predictably struggles hard. Springfield neighbors, especially Ned Flanders, take pity on him and pitch in to help. But you can only help Homer so much. Back in prison, Marge thrives in her own weird way. She uses her beehive hairdo as a weapon, makes some friends, and starts settling in. She's more at home in prison than she ever was on the outside, but Homer wants her home. He hires the blue-haired lawyer, who finds a loophole that should get Marge out early. Instead of celebrating though, Marge panics at the thought of returning to her overwhelming responsibilities.
Free?
Oh, and just in time. Bart's claiming he's in another dimension, but I think he's just hiding in the closet.
I had 90 days. I was promised 90 days.
Yeah, she really wants to avoid having to be around her kids. So in a moment of desperation, she fires a guard's gun to extend her sentence by 2 months rather than go back to being a full-time mom. What lucky kids they are. Meanwhile, Springfield's parents overreact to Marge's arrest and go full helicopter mode, putting kids on leashes and hovering like crazy. The kids rebel, sneaking off to the park for some freedom. But back at the prison, Marge has an epiphany.
I just wasn't ready for the outside. I didn't realize how much I needed a break. But maybe not a prison break.
Of course, her comments accidentally spark a riot. Amid the chaos, Homer shows up undercover as a guard to break her out. They escape only to return home to find Bart and Lisa suddenly clingier than ever. Turns out all you need to make your kids love you is some time in prison. Pretty sure that's a crime in itself. Prioritizing personal comfort, Marge quickly adapts to prison life, viewing it as a break from her family responsibilities. Kinda twisted if you ask me. Avoiding responsibilities. When given the opportunity for early release, Marge deliberately extends her sentence to avoid returning to her family. Reckless behavior. Marge fires a guard's gun to extend her sentence, showing a disregard for safety and setting a poor example. Arguably also a crime. Lack of concern. Marge seems more focused on her own needs than the well-being of her children during her time in prison. She doesn't care about them at all. It's pretty obvious by now that Marge really hates her family, or at least her kids. But just wait until she finds out she isn't the fun parent in the food wife. And no, I have no idea why she thought that either. Okay, so it starts with Homer being the fun parent. He takes Bart and Lisa out for a blast at E4. They come home with all these cool toys, and Marge, in true buzzkill mode, tries to deflate the fun. She really just can't help herself, huh? The kids are annoyed, and Homer rubs salt in the wound by basically calling Marge the boring mom. Nice job, homeboy.
How come they never call me fun mom?
Look, honey, a family's like a team. And on every team you have the slam-dunking megastar and the referee.
Naturally, Marge decides to prove she can be fun too, and plans a fun mom day for Bart and Lisa. But instead of the X Games, they end up at the Cross Games, a Christian conference where Reverend Lovejoy ropes them into a nativity play. I mean, how is that better? All of the other kids, of course, are at the actual X Games. Smooth, Marge. Real fun.
Come on, kids. Fun comes from inside. It isn't about what we actually do.
Yes, it is. That's all it is.
On the way home, their car breaks down and they wind up in the beloved Little Ethiopia. Desperate to prove she can be fun, Marge orders an exotic dish at a local restaurant, and surprise, everyone loves it. They even join a foodie group and start a blog called the Three Mouthketeers just to really get into the vibe. Suddenly, Marge is the cool, adventurous parent. Homer predictably gets jealous when Bart and Lisa start ditching his burgers and fries vibe for Marge's fancy leftovers. The foodie group invites Marge and the kids to El Chemistry, Springfield's swankiest restaurant. But now Homer, feeling replaced, accuses Marge of stealing his thunder. Marge fires back, calling him out for hogging all the fun while she's stuck at home with Maggie. She wants her shot at being the fun parent without him overshadowing her. And apparently, Maggie is the kid that sucks the most. Who knew? But when Homer sulks off to build birdhouses in the garage, Marge caves and invites him to the dinner, only to scheme behind his back. She really can't bear the idea of him being around, so she sends him to a fake address instead of the restaurant, thinking it'll keep him out of her spotlight, which is insane. Of course, it backfires spectacularly. Homer ends up at a meth lab. A meth lab gets caught in a police raid and nearly becomes collateral damage. Meanwhile, Bart and Lisa realize Marge is doing the exact thing she criticized Homer for, leaving him out. Marge finally sees her mistake and rushes to rescue Homer from the meth lab she sent him to. I mean, seriously. Marge uses her leftover fancy food to save him from a gunman, and the family has a heart-to-heart. Marge apologizes for sidelining Homer, and they promise to share the fun parent role moving forward. The episode wraps up with a family trip to Krusty Land, where Marge finally gets to enjoy being the cool mom. For real this time. Not for long, I imagine. Are cool moms bad moms? Deflating her children's excitement, Marge tries to dampen Bart and Lisa's enthusiasm about their fun date with Homer, showing a lack of empathy for their enjoyment because of her own jealousy. Yikes. Poor activity planning. Marge takes the kids to a Christian conference instead of an exciting event, demonstrating a disconnect with or disinterest in their interests, prioritizing her image over her children's preferences. Marge becomes obsessed with being the fun parent, focusing more on her own desires than her children's needs. Excluding Homer, Marge intentionally leaves Homer out of family activities, a perfect model of poor communication and relationship skills. Deception. Marge sends Homer to a fake address, putting him in danger and teaching her children that lying is acceptable, even if it kills her husband. Okay, so she's not a fun mom or a good mom, but maybe she could be a tennis mom? Apparently not, because she somehow turns that into total chaos in Tennis the Menace. Okay, so the episode kicks off with Marge rallying the family to attend a talent show at the Springfield Retirement Castle, where Grandpa's hilariously awful rendition of What's New Pussycat somehow wins him a prize. I guess the standards are just much lower there. This mix-up takes the family to a funeral home where Homer naturally gets sidetracked. He notices a cemetery monument made of the same amount of cement as a tennis court and impulsively decides they need one at home, even though they can barely afford their house. A tennis court, that is, not a cemetery monument. That would be a little too weird. So now they have a tennis court and the neighbors are all over it. But here's the kicker. Homer is terrible at tennis, like embarrassingly bad. The whole neighborhood mocks them, and Marge, trying to salvage their reputation, begs Homer to take the game seriously. But Homer just doesn't get it. Instead, he signs them up for Krusty's celebrity tennis tournament, the Krusty Charity Classic, thinking he'll magically become a tennis star overnight without even trying to practice. Marge is so fed up with Homer's incompetence that she dumps him as her doubles partner and replaces him with Bart. Yes, her 10-year-old son.
Well, actually, the name of Bart's partner is...
Yes, darling.
I'm Bart's partner.
No. You're my partner.
Dude, I think the lady's made her decision.
Homer is understandably hurt and furious, but instead of handling it maturely, he teams up with Lisa despite Marge and Bart. Well, this'll be healthy. Now the whole family's in a ridiculous rivalry, with poor Maggie caught in the middle of their petty drama. Fortunately, we know she's the suckiest kid, so there. At the actual tournament, things spiral even further. Homer ditches Lisa for Venus Williams, and Marge trades Bart for Serena Williams. But then even the Williams sisters abandon them, teaming up with Andre Agassi and Pete Sampras instead. You know, like actual pros would. So the Simpsons are left on the sidelines watching professional tennis stars completely overshadow their family meltdown. In the end, they realize they're better off as spectators than competitors. Homer tries to make peace by offering to buy dinner with the money he stole from Pete Sampras' wallet. Honestly, can't fault that one, but I can fault Marge's parenting, prioritizing reputation over family. This is kind of becoming a pattern now, huh? Marge is more concerned about how the neighbors perceive them than supporting Homer's newfound interest in tennis, replacing Homer with Bart. Marge dumps Homer as her doubles partner and replaces him with Bart, putting pressure on her son and creating tension with her husband, encouraging rivalry. By teaming up with Bart against Homer and Lisa, Marge fosters an unhealthy competitive atmosphere within the family. It's toxic, really. Setting a poor example, Marge's actions teach her children that it's acceptable to prioritize winning and social status over family unity and support, which, to be fair, she's done over and over in this video alone. Marge just cannot seem to communicate in anything but aggression and competition, even at Thanksgiving. In Bart vs. Thanksgiving, Marge decides to punish Bart's misbehavior in such an aggressive way. He ends up hanging out with the homeless. Nice job, Marge. It's Thanksgiving and Lisa's super proud of the centerpiece she made. Like, it's a whole feminist tribute to women like Susan B. Anthony and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. Actually kind of impressive, all things considered. Meanwhile, Bart's helping Marge in the kitchen with the turkey while Homer parks himself in front of the TV for the Macy's parade and football. Family members start arriving and everyone gathers at the table. It's finally time for the most important part of the day, the meal. Lisa brings out her centerpiece and is all excited to show it off, but Bart rolls in with the turkey and starts complaining that there's no space on the table because of that dang centerpiece. Things get tense, and before you know it, Bart chucks the centerpiece into the fireplace. Of course, it bursts into flames, and Lisa's creation is reduced to ashes. All that female progress up in flames, chaos erupts, and Marge and Homer separate the kids. Lisa storms off in tears, and Bart gets sent to his room with no Thanksgiving dinner. Pretty harsh punishment, honestly.
I hope you're happy, Bart. You ruined Thanksgiving.
Marge tries to comfort Lisa, who's crying her eyes out, but when she goes to check on Bart, he's not budging on apologizing. Instead, he's stewing in his room, insisting he did nothing wrong. Eventually, Bart sneaks out of the house with Santa's little helper, setting off on a mini adventure. And here's the kicker. Marge and Homer have no idea that Bart isn't even in the house. Bart winds up wandering around town, even trying to steal a pie from Mr. Burns' windowsill. He ends up at a soup kitchen donating blood for cash and grabbing a meal with some homeless folks. So he's being safe, at least. Back home, the family is kind of in shambles. They're trying to enjoy Thanksgiving dinner, but it's clear something's off. Then they spot Bart on TV during a news segment at the shelter, where he basically calls out his family for kicking him out. Marge is horrified. She realizes her words pushed him to run away. Everyone panics and starts scrambling to find Bart.
Homer, this is a terrible thing that's happened, but we can't blame ourselves.
We can and will.
Yes, you should. I'm not even sure why she's trying not to take the blame. Eventually, Bart has a change of heart. He realizes he took things too far, sneaks back home, and has a sweet heart-to-heart with Lisa. She convinces him to apologize for ruining her centerpiece, and they make up. The episode ends on a surprisingly heartfelt note, with the family finally coming together for turkey sandwiches and a late-night Thanksgiving feast. And nobody seems particularly bothered that Bart could have had something bad happen. Let's dig into Marge's parenting more here. Harsh punishment. Marge sends Bart to his room without dinner, which is an extreme response to Bart acting out. Lack of mediation. Marge fails to effectively mediate the conflict between Bart and Lisa, allowing the situation to escalate. Actually, she just kind of ignores the problem. Poor communication. Marge's words inadvertently push Bart to run away, indicating a failure to express herself clearly and empathetic, neglecting emotional needs. Marge doesn't address Bart's feelings or help him understand why his actions were wrong. She just rejects him. Look, Marge wants peace and niceness and comfort, and there's nothing wrong with that, except in the case of something like Itchy and Scratchy and Marge, when she starts pushing her beliefs on, well, everyone. This episode kicks off with Homer trying to build Marge a spice rack, which sounds sweet, right? But then Maggie comes out of nowhere and smacks him on the head with a mallet. Like, what? How did she? I don't even know where to start on it. Marge is totally clueless about why Maggie's suddenly so violent. Then Maggie sees an episode of the Itchy and Scratchy show and tries to stab Homer with a pencil. Naturally, Marge jumps straight to blaming the show. To be fair, there's not much other explanation for a homicidal baby.
What kind of warped human being would find that funny?
Instead of digging deeper into why Maggie might be acting out, she just bans Itchy and Scratchy for the whole house, which ticks off Bart and Lisa big time. I mean, what else can they do? Talk to one another? But of course, kids being kids, Bart and Lisa just sneak off to their friends' houses to watch the show anyway. You can't tell them what to do. Meanwhile, Marge decides to take her crusade against cartoon violence to the next level. She writes to the show's producer, Roger Myers Jr., asking him to tone down the violence, but he basically laughs her off. Big mistake, buddy. She's crazy.
And the horse I rode in on I'll show them what one screwball can do.
Marge forms this whole protest group, Springfieldians for Nonviolence, Understanding, and Helping, or SNUH, and gets people to picket outside the studios. She's so wrapped up in her new activist life that the family's stuck eating TV dinners for days without TV, while Marge attends protests. Even Homer, who's usually oblivious, seems kind of over the whole thing. Eventually, Marge's campaign works, and Itchy and Scratchy get completely sanitized. Like, instead of cartoon violence, it's just these two characters sitting around chatting or reading stories. Seriously, just sad to watch. Maggie finally chills out, but Bart, Lisa, and every other kid in Springfield are totally over the show. Suddenly, all the kids are playing outside, discovering sunlight for the first time. It's weirdly moving. Marge thinks it's great. Finally, kids are being wholesome. But then Michelangelo's David comes to Springfield, and SNUH wants Marge to protest it because it's offensive.
But that's Michelangelo's David. It's a masterpiece.
It's filth. It graphically portrays parts of the human body, which, practical as they may be, are evil.
Marge, being an artist, sees it for what it is, a masterful work of art, and she realizes her whole anti-cartoon violence crusade might have been a bit much. It's still art, whether she likes it or not. She backs off, and Itchy and Scratchy goes back to its violent ways. The kids abandon the outdoors and glue themselves back to the TV, leaving Marge feeling pretty defeated. But hey, the kids are happy. In the end, Marge is bummed that Bart and Lisa are missing out on something culturally enriching, like David, because they're too busy watching cartoon carnage. But she could just, educate them, like I'm about to educate her on her poor parenting. Overreaction. Instead of addressing Maggie's violent behavior directly, Marge blames TV and bans Itchy and Scratchy for the whole family, which is a little much, neglecting family needs. Marge becomes so focused on her protest that she neglects her family, leaving them to eat TV dinners for days. And because she ruined TV, they don't even have that, imposing personal views. Marge forces her anti-violence stance on her children without considering their perspectives or needs. Inconsistent values. Marge defends Michelangelo's David while censoring cartoons, only to eventually realize inconsistency in her values. Lack of communication. Rather than discussing the issue with her children, Marge resorts to blanket bans and protests, a pretty common thing among moms. At least Marge eventually came to acknowledge that she was out of line, but that's not something that happens often. As you'll see in It's a Mad Mad Marge, one of the single worst Marge episodes ever made. This episode kicks off with Bart getting a video camera from school for a class movie project, and you just know this is gonna lead to chaos. Meanwhile, Otto proposes to his girlfriend Becky at a fast food drive-thru, like the classy guy he is, and somehow Bart promises their backyard as a wedding venue. Marge, of course, isn't thrilled, but the backyard is still cluttered with stuff from Apu's wedding, so she reluctantly agrees. At least they can finally get rid of it all. Fast forward to the wedding day, and Becky drops a bomb on Marge. She hates heavy metal, which is kinda Otto's whole personality.
Don't tell Otto, but I'm not into heavy metal and he loves it. He refers to our lovemaking as the headbanger's ball.
Oh, you can fix little defects like that with gentle nagging. Make it part of the background noise of your relationship. That's how I polished Homer into the perfect Homer. No, that's ice!
Marge, instead of staying out of it, encourages Becky to speak up, and it spirals into Becky giving Otto an ultimatum, her or heavy metal. Otto naturally chooses his music, the wedding falls apart, and Becky ends up crashing at the Simpson house because Marge feels guilty for meddling. But in doing so, Marge starts giving her some pointers. That's messed up. Jeez.
And Lisa's going through this phase where she doesn't eat any meat. So I usually sneak a little meat juice into her vegetables.
Becky's super nice and helpful, but Marge quickly becomes jealous, convinced Becky's out to steal her family. Soon, Marge's car brakes fail, and she spirals into full-blown paranoia, accusing Becky of sabotaging her. Marge even goes to the cops, but Chief Wiggum is, as always, useless. Not that we expect anything different at this point. Meanwhile, Becky tells the family she's moving out, and even buys everyone a giant celebratory ice cream sundae. Homer predictably passes out face first into the dessert, and Becky gives him mouth-to-mouth just as Marge walks in. It, looks wrong. Marge loses it, attacks Becky, and ends up getting arrested. At her sanity hearing, the doctors declare Marge legally insane, but she escapes and goes full fugitive, which, to be fair, is what an insane person would do. She does some amateur sleuthing at the library, expecting to dig up dirt on Becky, but finds nothing shady, just proof that she probably did ruin Otto's wedding. Feeling guilty, she heads home, only to stumble upon a wild scene. Homer's tied up in bondage gear, Lisa's chained to the wall, Maggie's in a cage, and Becky's holding a knife over Homer. Marge freaks out and attacks Becky, but plot twist, it's all part of Bart's school project. And I have 10,000 more questions about Springfield Elementary. Everyone starts apologizing. Homer admits he cut Marge's brakes by accident, and Becky casually confesses she was planning to kill Marge, but gave up because it was too much work. Then the insanity doctors show up and tranquilize Marge mid-apology, but it doesn't work. She's too excited to get back to her chores, but when she asks Homer to do some cleaning, he shoots another dart into her neck, knocking her out for good. I guess that's a happy ending? For someone anyway, but her parenting? Not so much. Meddling in Otto's relationship. Marge encourages Becky to confront Otto, leading to the wedding's collapse and setting a poor example for her children about respecting others' relationships. Not that she ever really respected boundaries, allowing a stranger to live with the family. Marge lets Becky stay at their house out of guilt, potentially putting her children at risk. Paranoia and false accusations. Marge's unfounded suspicions of Becky create an unstable home environment for her children, and everyone really. Violent behavior. Marge physically attacks Becky in front of her family, showcasing inappropriate conflict resolution right there. Neglecting her children's needs. Marge's preoccupation with Becky leads her to overlook her children's well-being entirely.